as you all know then, if you're not, oh, excellent. Thanks so much, Clifton. Thank you so much for joining us all today. My name is Hannah Debelius, and I thought I would use a little bit of video today while I'm talking, because as we all know, times are unprecedented, and I think that sometimes that face-to-face is just really nice. So thanks for joining me in my home today for the second quarterly call for the waste reduction pilot. Let's see here. So as we all know, the quarterly calls are really designed for this family of the waste pilot so we can spotlight leadership, present resources, and also provide a forum to share these challenges and opportunities. So we are very lucky to have on the line two guest speakers today that I'll introduce when I talk about the agenda. But we just want to keep this in mind that if you have a question or a discussion item, please go ahead and throw that in the chat box or write it down to remember when we open up the line at the end, because we really do want these quarterly calls to foster that cohort feeling for everyone in the waste reduction pilot, in addition to being a great resource that we can continue to utilize. So with that, for today's agenda, I'll start with some introductions and some program updates. Then I'll turn it over to our first speaker, who's Samantha Kenny from the World Wildlife Fund, and then Lori Driver from Flowers Foods, and that's one of our partners in the waste pilot. And then we'll have some time for Q&A and discussion, and we'll wrap it up from there. So as I mentioned, my name is Hannah Debelius. That's all my contact information there. And hopefully at least my name is familiar to some of you all, because I've been working with all of our commercial partners in addition to Andrea Dukakis. Then I also am joined on the waste pilot team by Bruce, Eason, and Eli, who will all work with our industrial partners. But for you all, just a reminder, you're welcome to reach out to any of us anytime, or you can reach out to your regular Better Buildings account manager or technical account manager, because they're also up to speed and here to help you anytime. A couple of exciting program updates before we jump into the content for today. First of all, thank you so much for everybody who stepped up and shared some of their waste data with us. We really appreciate that. We had almost a third of our partners at a point where they were comfortable sharing some of that waste data, and I know this is a huge ongoing challenge that we're also using the pilot to focus on. So we're hoping that we'll have some early results and some statistics that we can share with you all by the time that we get to the Better Building Summit. Also, last week we published our first solution with a commercial partner, which is Shorenstein. So you all can check out the solution at a glance they put together about engagement with their tenants and how they've rolled out this waste management. I think you all know this now, but the Better Building Summit is now a virtual leadership symposium, but it's over the same dates, which is June 8th to 11th. And so I hope you all will join us for a session we have there that's going to release some of the early results from the waste pilot, and also give a lot of opportunities for you all and a larger cohort of the Better Building family to really talk about waste and get through some of those challenges. The summit is now completely free and open to anybody. So, this is also a great time if you have a waste manager or someone else on your team that would like to get involved but maybe wasn't able to make it in person. This is a great opportunity for them to join us virtually, especially for that session. And also, you can look forward to our next quarterly call in August. We'll be announcing that date in the next couple of months. And if there's a topic that you'd really like to see covered, or you'd really like to cover yourself in one of those, please reach out to one of us, because we'd love to hear your ideas on that. Excellent. Without further ado, in just a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Samantha Kenny. Samantha Kenny is a program officer of the food waste team at World Wildlife Fund, where she manages work streams to engage global food service and tourism sectors. The Hotel Kitchen platform, released in 2017 in collaboration with the American Hotel and Lodging Association, offers prevention-first food waste guidance for the hotel sector and has been adopted in operations around the globe, including in the U.S., Latin America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. The 86 Food Waste Platform, released in 2020 in collaboration with the National Restaurant Association, offers similar guidance for the U.S. restaurant sector. And she works to coordinate the global WWF network on food loss and waste strategy. It's a really cool tool. I'm so excited that Samantha is on the line today to offer some of her expertise on this. So without further ado, let's see if I can pass that off to Samantha.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Hey,
yeah.
Great. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen correctly. Okay, can you see my presentation in the correct view?
Yep, that looks perfect. Thanks, Samantha.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, hi everyone. I'm really glad to be speaking with you today, and thank you so much, Hannah and the DOE team, for hosting us. My name is Samantha Kenny, and I've worked on the World Wildlife Fund food waste team based out of Washington, D.C. for almost 4 years now. This team is multifunctional, working across the global food system from farm to fork. And I spend most of my time focused on preventing and managing food waste in the food service sector, as Hannah mentioned, including in hotels, restaurants, cruises, and commercial food service. I also spend a lot of time coordinating the WWF global network of offices and staff more broadly on food loss and waste strategy. So WWF is a conservation organization that works with companies and communities across the globe to address the most pressing environmental needs of people and nature. So you might be familiar with our panda logo or our work with wildlife and ecosystems, but sometimes we get questions on how food and food waste fit into that mission. So we as a global organization work across these 6 pillars. We call them goal teams. Some of them are no-brainers, like wildlife and oceans, what WWF has always worked on. Food is among the newer of these goal teams, and it includes bodies of work focused on increasing the sustainability of global food production, eliminating food loss and waste across value chains, and promoting sustainable consumption of food. The food program was added to WWF's portfolio once it really became clear how large an impact food and food production and consumption have on people and the landscapes where we do our work. And as it turns out, food production is one of the biggest threats to life on the planet right now and always. When you consider the habitat conversion and resources that go into producing food, the logistics and processing chain used to move food towards end users, and the huge web of distributors and outlets selling and serving food to the public, I know a lot of us are involved in that value chain. The food system is central to all of our lives, more clear than ever that food is one of the economic and societal keystones. Producing and consuming food accounts for the single largest sink of resources of any system, and it has had compounding impacts in the world's most fragile places. So 70% of biodiversity loss is due to agriculture. You can see this heartbreaking photo here, this wild orangutan traveling on a road that was cleared to transport palm harvest. You might think of conversion of the Amazon for ranching, but an example even closer to home, the Great Plains in North America lose more wild land every year to agriculture than the Brazilian rainforest. That really floored me when I found out. And forgive a few more stats just to put it into some more context within WWF's mission, just showing the outsized impact that agriculture has on freshwater stores, our GHG emissions and chemical use, and that we're exploiting our fisheries and our topsoil resources really quickly that we need for productive food production into the future. And all of those stats are made even crazier when we understand that even after investing all of that land, energy, chemicals, and fresh water into the production of food, 1/3 of what we grow ends up uneaten, which is obviously a huge waste, but also a huge opportunity if we can find ways to rescue that food or keep it in the supply chain. Think of the people we can feed and how much more resilient our food system can be, especially in uncertain circumstances like the one we're presented with now by COVID. So how do we find all of this waste and how do we begin to mend the food system? So ReFed is an organization working to address food waste in the U.S. And right now they're coordinating a really amazing stakeholder group to support food access programs across the country as the food insecure population continues to rise. Their 2016 report, which I've shown a photo of here, identified consumer-facing businesses as one of the lead drivers of food waste in the U.S., along with farms, with loss on farms and food waste in homes. This report here was really the genesis of the WWF food loss and waste strategy. giving us our North Star to work from farm to fork and make the largest impact on global food systems. So in the U.S., WWF is particularly well positioned to work with governments and businesses. There is a really great campaign I'll mention on household level food waste if you're interested, and that's run by the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC. You can find that at savethefood.com. It's really fun to click through those resources if you'd like. But we as WWF US see ourselves best positioned to address loss and waste across these 5 sectors I'm showing. I lead our work with hospitality, tourism, restaurants, and food service, which I'll spend a few minutes diving deeper into later in the presentation. But I have colleagues on my team working with grocery retail sector, farms, and in schools. Our engagement with grocery stores right now focuses really on this Pacific Coast Collaborative, which some of you might have heard of. It's a voluntary agreement among cities along the Pacific Coast to fight food waste. And through that platform, a resource for fighting food waste in grocery stores will be tested. We have a great report series focusing in on post-harvest loss called No Food Left Behind. The most recent report in that series examines how we might leverage gig economy workers to harvest crops. And we have a curriculum and set of resources geared for middle and high school students to learn about food waste and its connection to nature and wildlife. Those resources include guides on conducting school cafeteria food waste audits and analyzing that collected data through an online program database that holds information from hundreds of cafeteria food waste audits that we've conducted in the last year through partner schools. While I'm not involved in any of that work directly on the day-to-day, though it's really cool to stay up to date on it, I'm happy to direct any questions you might have to my colleagues that work in those areas. I'll share my email at the end of the presentation for any follow-ups. So each of the programs I mentioned really favor the prevention of food waste over any management strategy. Prevention secures the most benefit for our systems, and it's in line with US EPA guidance that I've shown here. If food waste can't be prevented, it should be recovered whenever possible to feed people. In the US, this is often coordinated through a huge network of food banks operating under Feeding America. If recovery to feed people isn't possible, there are several examples of successful repurposing of unused food to feed animals. And while I've seen some direct feeding examples where a food outlet will donate unused food to a pig farmer, for example, for direct consumption, WWF is currently working with Qantas on a really cool project to better understand value-added processing to turn food waste into animal feed pellets at a commercial scale, which can offer numerous environmental and supply chain benefits, including energy efficiency. I'm by no means an expert in that body of work, but would really love to connect anyone interested with the team working on that project. So if those prevention or reuse options aren't possible, then we get into disposal strategies. And there's some debate on how industrial uses or composting should be ordered on this list, but either could be more beneficial depending on the context where it's operating. Disposal options include things like recycling cooking oil into biofuel, creating compost or soil amendment to sell or distribute to local ag, or using anaerobic digesters to make energy. The team's also thinking about working with other WWF colleagues who function with the dairy sector and on climate goals to understand the viability of scaling energy-producing anaerobic digestion as a productive end-of-life option for food waste. There's a lot of really interesting pros and cons when considering that end-of-life destination that I'd love to talk about if anyone's interested, and I can connect to some of the people that know much more than me on that. But the absolute least preferred method of disposing food waste is in a landfill or an incinerator. You know, food is always food, and it can feed people or animals, or it can be used to grow more food. It takes a lot of energy to burn food in an incinerator. It's such a wet item. And burying food in a landfill is likely worst of all, because food in a landfill sealed in without oxygen, it breaks down to methane. You might have seen pipes sticking up out of landfills. I was that nerdy kid who always stared out the window at landfills. I've been a waste nerd for life. But there are pipes that are actually used for off-gassing methane from organic material that's decomposing down there. And that's quite a potent greenhouse gas. So with all of those considerations in mind, my team set out 4 years ago to first engage the hotel sector. We saw hotels as employing a critical mass of food service workers and serving a critical mass of the public. We boiled the EPA inverted pyramid from the last slide into this strategy: prevent whatever you can to secure the maximum benefit for your business, your community, and the planet. Donate what you can't prevent, and keep anything left over out of landfills. All of these efforts are underpinned by separation and measurement. As we found, it's nearly impossible to justify an initiative to fight food waste if it's invisible in your operation. The first step is really to separate all of that food from the other waste streams. Begin measuring it by weight, volume, dollars, anything that can help you put it into scope and scale for to put it into business terms to understand the scope and scale of your food waste problem. We took those principles and, with funding from the Rockefeller Foundation, partnered with the American Hotel and Lodging Association about four years ago. The HLA worked with us to convene a hotel sector working group that included lots of the big players: Hilton, who we were already working with on food waste, Marriott, Hyatt, IHG, Accor. We worked with these stakeholders to develop and launch a platform for hotels to prevent and manage food waste in every aspect of their operation. The guidance, we ordered it chronologically from purchasing food all the way to disposal, as well as by staff functions, so anyone who visits the platform website can find resources that are most relevant to their job. The website, hotelkitchen.org, it includes free staff video training series, tips to serve more efficient buffets, strategies to message to guests on the topic of food waste, and just about every other resource we could think of including. We launched that back in 2017 and have since been working with the Rockefeller Foundation to scale adoption through our global WWF network to key sectors around the globe. So I've written out this hotelkitchen.org on the last slide in case anyone's interested to take a closer look. Then starting last year, we began working with the National Restaurant Association to form a similar platform geared to the U.S. restaurant sector. It follows the same principles, prevent, donate, divert, as Hotel Kitchen, but it's specific to restaurants from quick service through to sit-down independent dining. New resources for this platform include a really great restaurant-centric training video and an ingredient yield calculator to help operators plan menus. All of those are at 86foodwaste.com. I've also written that out on my last slide, and we just launched that a few months ago. So as you can imagine, COVID has had a really outsized impact on these sectors that I spend a lot of my time working with. We've seen a huge disruption, almost a full stop, to hotel operations and a drastic impact on the day-to-day of almost every restaurant. I'll mention now that our primary focus in this moment is finding ways to support our partners through these closures and respecting all of the new responsibilities and shifted priorities that have come up over the last few months. But with that said, we're also considering the role that food waste will play in these businesses into the future, a future that's more aware and sensitive to food system disruptions, and one that is more focused than ever on contributions to help communities. Eliminating waste from our systems is more pertinent than ever, and the benefits a business can see from this work are more integral now than they've ever been before. We see these benefits as fourfold. So on the personnel side, we've seen this work motivate and energize staff teams. We even see that work on this initiative can improve employee retention and morale. Culinary teams are the physical and creative driver of this type of initiative, and wasted food can also be a waste of their time and talent. Those individuals are often members of the surrounding community, and they can have a deep and personal connection to local food insecurity as well. It makes them really fantastic partners for launching and leading this type of initiative. There are major benefits for the planet, local and global environment, as we chatted about earlier. So these efforts can help companies achieve certain brand or property, environmental or social goals that they've made publicly. And another large opportunity is the PR and marketing benefit, tapping into sustainability as an increasingly popular trend for travelers and diners. As far as the impact of food waste initiatives on a hotel or restaurant's bottom line, Champions 12.3, it's a multifunctional group working to achieve UN SDG Sustainable Development Goal Target 12.3, released 2 business cases that showed a 7-to-1 return on investment for hotels and restaurants that are working to address food waste. So these studies were actually conducted separately with 2 distinct international cohorts. It's a convenient coincidence for me that they both ended up showing the exact same return on investment for every $1 invested in this type of initiative in hotels or restaurants. They were seeing a $7 return. So So that's a really quick overview of the WWF Food Waste Program and a bit of a deeper dive into the work streams that I coordinate. I hope that if I mentioned a body of work that you're interested in, even if it's not my specialty, that you'll reach out to learn more from my colleagues. And I'm really happy to make any of those connections within WWF or through my network. To finish us up today, I wanted to share a bit about the territorial reach of these programs in case it lines up well with a priority area for you or your company, and that might spark some follow-up. So for all of these, I can lend more details or local context offline if you just shoot me an email. So the food waste program I've described, including our work on hotel kitchens, started here in the U.S. office of WWF US. Early in that program development, we led 2 regional cohorts to adopt hotel kitchen guidance through consultant leadership in Portland, Oregon, and Baltimore, Maryland. And just last year, we were funded by the American Hotel and Lodging Education Foundation to seed larger engagements on hotel kitchen in Denver, Colorado, Dallas, Texas, and in South Florida, greater Miami area. When we were directed by Rockefeller to scale engagement with hotels on food waste globally about 3.5 years ago, we learned that other WWF programs were already working to address food waste in hotels in the countries I've highlighted here in light green. So we spent some time learning from their experiences and leadership, and we are still to this day really tied to them strategically and learning from the different actions that they're taking with their respective programs. Then over the last 3 years with Rockefeller support, we have been working to build capacity and conduct pilots with hotels in all of the countries you see here colored in blue. In Eastern Europe, our team operating as WWF Adria led pilots in both Croatia and Serbia. That's why they're lumped. And some of the countries you see here have hired permanent staff in this function, both specifically on hotels, but some have evolved into larger strategic staff on food systems. And others are just getting started. We're reporting against this multi-year scaling effort to Rockefeller later in 2020. So some of them are still active. And I see here that I mislabeled Zimbabwe as Kenya twice. Kenya doesn't appear twice, so one of them is Zimbabwe. And then earlier this year, the WWF Global Food Practice launched an effort to develop coordinated strategies on food loss and waste across our network. It's been a really cool effort. We've been working with a global cohort of WWF staff. You can see their territories here highlighted in dark green. We've been working with them to develop a strategy that's really specific to their country or region, and we're in the process of finalizing those later this summer for the purpose of coordinated projects and fundraising. And those strategies definitely transcend food waste in hotels. They follow a full farm-to-fork view that addresses food loss and waste across the global supply chain. And finally, I wanted to highlight that there are many other regions and organizations doing really great work to address food loss and waste. WRAP, the Waste and Resources Action Program, is of particular note, coordinating voluntary agreements efforts in key areas globally. They started in the UK. They led a really awesome voluntary agreement work in the UAE with lots of great partners, and they're working on that elsewhere as well. And I wanted to mention that WWF has MOUs with WRAP and other organizations or more informal relationships with the groups working on food waste globally, and are really happy to work to make connections and introductions if anyone's interested in a region where we don't have particular reach that you don't see me highlighting here. So hopefully you've taken quick note of any overlap you see between your work and these topics and areas, and I really look forward to connecting with any of you to provide more detail or to direct you to someone else in my network that might offer some opportunities for collaboration. And with that, I'll wrap, and I'll send my thanks and best wishes to everyone on the line today and to the team from DOE for hosting us. Thanks so much for your attention and for all the work that you do here on the Waste Pilot.
Great. Thank you so much, Samantha. I really appreciate all those really beautiful slides. And I know that some of the partners that you work with on the Hotel Kitchens resource are also some of the partners that we have in the Better Buildings program. So it's always great to see their reach beyond that. So with that, I'm going to share a quick slide again so that I can introduce our next speaker. So Samantha was, of course, one of our experts in the industry, and she was talking about this food waste issue overall and some of the wonderful resources and strategies that they've put forward. And next, we're going to hear from Lori Driver, who will be able to share this perspective of being a partner in our waste pilot. So I think that'll be really great. And she's also more on the industrial side of things. So let's hear. So Lori Driver is the Corporate Sustainability Manager for Flowers Foods. Over the 15 years with the company, she has worked in production, quality, human resources, environmental, safety, and sustainability. She identifies project initiatives and develops programs across all operations related to energy efficiency, water savings, and waste reduction and recycling. So with that, I am very excited to turn it over to you, Lori. Looks like you're starting to share content, and that looks great from our perspective. Lori, I can't hear you yet. Is it possible that you're on mute? Lori, is that you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, now we can hear you great, and we see your slides.
Awesome.
So go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you guys for having me. Yes, I'm Lori Driver. I'm the Corporate Sustainability Manager in Flowers Foods. Flowers, just to kind of give you a little background, started in 1919. We have 46 manufacturing facilities from east to west coast with over 9,700 employees. We produce brands such as Nature's Own, DKB, Dave's Killer Bread, Canyon Bakehouse, Tasty Cake, Cobblestone, Mrs. Freshly's, and Wonder Bread. We serve 85% of the U.S., and so a lot of what we're going to talk about today is how we reclaim our food waste that we produce in our industry. In the baking industry, there are several types of food waste. We have our food-grade oil. This is typically used in our fryers at our cake facilities, or the pan oil that is used to help facilitate the bread. We have our bulk ingredients. In most cases, when we have bulk ingredient issues, usually we send those back to the manufacturers. In other cases, we will try to make sure we coordinate it so that when the ingredient goes obsolete, that we schedule it accordingly to our production run so that we don't have much waste. We have wet food waste. This is like your dough, your uncooked, your unprocessed food that you happen to, we generate that type of waste on the production line over the course of the production run hours. And then there's dry food. This is your finished product that may have been damaged or there was a quality issue that prevented it from going to the market. And stale is the term that we like to use in the industry where the product has made it to the market but did not sell at the store and was returned to us for us to repurpose it or dispose of it in some way. This is basically just trying to give you a little bit of a picture of the types of waste we produce and the volume. So in our bakery waste, this is the combination of our wet and dry, some bulk ingredients that may get mixed in for whatever reason. So 90% of the waste that we produce is typically in our manufacturing facility. 9% is what is coming back from the stores, and then we have about 1% that is our food grade oil. Now, with that being said, with the bakery waste, sometimes we do blend our systems, and so we may get some of that stale through haulbacks back into our bakery waste. But typically, over 200,000 tons we reclaim and repurpose each year. The different ways that we try to reuse and recycle our food waste is we do our food banks. We have discount stores, our thrift stores. These are Flowers' own thrift stores where we will bring the product back from the stores and put into our own thrift stores for a discounted price. And then once we are no longer able to contribute to the food banks or the thrift stores, and typically that's like, at what point can we stop sending to the food banks and discounts? So once we reach the expiration date, then we have to pull from the market altogether, and then we switch to animal feed conversion. And so we usually take all of our bulk product and it goes to recyclers for animal feed conversion. And of course, our food grade oil is its own sector completely. As small amounts can be blended with the bakery waste and the stale, but as far as the bulk oil, it is usually converted into biodiesel with certain key recyclers. So at our manufacturing facilities, what we have done is we have partnered with several different recyclers in geographic regions, and we've set up bulk stations at our manufacturing facilities. It's important that we make sure to maximize the loads to at least 20 tons per load before going to the recycler. This keeps emissions and trucks off the road, and it also maximizes cost efficiency so that these programs are sustainable for a more long-term basis. If bulk systems can't handle additional volume, or maybe the site is not large enough for more than one bulk system, we will do different types of operations and customize to a drop trailer to collect like stale haulback materials. At our warehouses and distribution centers, this is typically where we would collect our stale. Some of them have higher volume because they may serve as a hub for a lot of smaller warehouses, or in that different market or geographic region, they may have a higher stale count. So at those, we try to implement bulk systems directly at those sites. They don't have to try to move the product through another truck on the road back to the manufacturing facility. In these types of situations, we typically do drop trailers, dry vans, or compactor type systems. These types of systems are a little bit lower cost than a bulk system, and are easier to do in smaller operations. And then, as I mentioned, some warehouses actually haul their stale back to manufacturing facilities if there is an existing route in the logistics lines for that material to make its way back. So at our food banks and discount stores, Flowers participates in local food banks and donates within their community. In 2019, Flowers actually donated over $10 million to food banks, and some of that was fresh product, and then a portion of that was also us repurposing our existing, our food waste and back into the system. It was just kind of speak to the earlier presentation. I thought it was interesting to see the food pyramid and how it actually kind of falls into the same line to what we try to achieve here at Flowers. A good portion of the product that does not sell in the market, once we do the food banks, then we put it in our own discount stores so that the local communities of where most of these materials are being produced and generated can be purchased. And once it is no longer viable for discount stores and human consumption, then we move it over to animal feed conversion. And to speak further on the waste oil, some of our cake plants will reclaim oil to be reused as biodiesel. Others with lower volumes may blend their oil in with their bakery waste for the animal feed conversion. And then others may use intermediate bulk containers. These intermediate bulk containers, known to us, we usually call them IBCs. They hold up to 330 gallons or 55-gallon drums. And then the recycler we can schedule pickups for these materials so they can be converted to biodiesel. We also have in one of our cake plants where this particular facility has an oil filtration system so that they can not completely, but significantly reduce their oil use. And they basically go through a filtration system to eliminate waste oil. With that being said, we are continuing to do several different things. We recently set our goal to a zero waste to landfill to achieve a target of 98% diversion. Part of what we've done to help tackle this is we created an internal waste services team, and we did this in 2019 to provide that additional support. By doing this, we've been able to create some transparency that also allows us to see weaknesses or things that we need to do to improve, or identify if there are any more food or any other types of waste going in the landfill that would be better in another avenue. We also have site visits as part of this program to identify opportunities for improvement. And then we also do dumpster surveys. And the great thing about the dumpster surveys is they can be done remotely. This is typically where we have an inquiry, a questionnaire, and then it's usually a 7-day photo op where they take pictures of all their collection containers for 7 days, and then we can evaluate the materials to make sure that they are being sourced and going to the right place. And then with that, we also continue to partner with other departments. As I mentioned earlier, logistics, marketing, distributors, and then retail and manufacturing to make sure that we are doing everything we possibly can to continue to reclaim all our food waste and divert it from landfill. So with that being said, I'll hand it back over to Hannah. And if anybody has any more questions or details about specifics, you can feel free to email me at lori.driver@flowcorp.com. I'll be happy to kind of have one-on-one with you about more details.
Great. Thank you so much, Lori. Let's just all right, one moment. I'm looking to share my PowerPoint here again. Clifton, my computer seems to be frozen. If you wouldn't mind to share the Q&A slide, that would be wonderful if you have that up, Clifton.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that in a second.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Lori and Samantha, both for sharing all of your expertise and your experience here. We have one question already that came in the chat, but just as a reminder for all of you, you're welcome to either utilize the chat box or you can take yourself off mute. So the first question is, perfect. Thank you so much, Clifton. I appreciate that. The first question we have, it looks like it's directed towards Lori, and it says, what advanced or innovative technologies, such as food packaging or materials, that could food manufacturers use in the manufacturing phase to increase the shelf life of food and reduce losses? Let me see here. Reduce losses in the end-use phase. So from Flowers Foods, from your point of view, can you name one technology that's new or exciting that you've been able to use to eliminate waste downstream?
Well, that's a really tough question. I think it's all about the science, and so that's really more of a business industry question, but there is a science to making sure that you maximize the shelf life of your product, particularly for bread, but I can't speak to a specific technology on that.
Yeah. Well, anyone else also, if you're on the line, you're in this pilot, you're welcome to also pipe up if you have an idea for that. And I'll also say Elizabeth, which is one of our partners from the city of Beaverton, Oregon, reached out to me earlier this week because they've done a little bit of food waste reduction and composting themselves. So Elizabeth, are you willing to pop on and unmute yourself and share a little bit of your experience from Beaverton?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Yeah, and I also do have a slide that's right after this one that has those two resources that you sent over earlier. So actually, Kristen, if you wanted to just advance one forward while Elizabeth is speaking, that would be great. Perfect.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I also posted a question for Samantha. I was typing as you were asking me to come on,
yeah,
so I was like, oh, okay.
I'll get to that one next.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Thanks so much for everybody's presentations. Those were great. And yeah, I just wanted to say we did work. So Metro's a regional government in the Portland, Oregon area. I work for the city of Beaverton. It's within that region. And a few years back, we had worked with World Wildlife Fund on their hotel kitchen. And I think on those links, there's a couple of videos and there's a webinar from Hotel Kitchen when we worked with them on there that might be interesting for some of you to look at, and a bunch of resources that we use in our region to work with our local business community that you might find useful as well. We coordinated with the Orlis, Oregon Lodging Association, and then our state Department of Environmental Quality, and then the regional governments to create this campaign, which is called Food Waste Stops With Me. Right? Yes. Oh my gosh, there's so many names to things. Because we also have a residential one called Eat Smart Waste Less, so it's very confusing. But yeah, so I just thought I'd share those resources. They're on there. You're welcome to reach out to me if you have questions about any of the tools or resources on there, and I can either try to answer your questions or link you with the Metro people who kind of worked on that campaign, and it's still ongoing. We've been doing it for a couple years now. Yeah, and definitely have some lessons learned and takeaways that we're happy to share.
Yeah, thanks so much, Elizabeth. And I know that you're unique in our pilot in that you're, in the public sector, and I might be our only partner that from the public sector in the pilot, although of course we have many other Better Buildings partners. But I know that a lot of our other partners have had experiences working in conjunction with their cities or regions on that. That came up, in fact, just in the Solution at a Glance that we worked on with Shorenstein last week. So, interested in those experiences as well. I'm going to go to the chat box because we have a couple of things there. A question for Samantha is, could you expand a little on the differences between the hotel kitchen resource and 86foodwaste.org? Samantha, you might be on mute if you're speaking.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, now you're loud and clear.
That's great news. Okay, so thanks so much for the question, Elizabeth. It's really great to hear from you. I'm such a huge fan of the work that Metro and Orla do, and I'm really glad to be collaborating on that. Absolutely. So I guess the primary difference between Hotel Kitchen and 86 Food Waste is how they're directed to their audience. So one is really crafted to a hotel audience, and the other is really crafted to the restaurant sector. And we found that it's that both sectors, even though they overlap in that their culinary functions, have kind of different cultures, different language, and also a real comfort when resources are directed directly for them and are understanding their context. So Hotel Kitchen is backed by AHLA as its kind of expert industry base, and 86 Food Waste is backed by NRA. Obviously, those two groups are really well connected. And I'll say where it's really based on the same principles, and you can find the same inspiring underlying foundation for both. You're going to find more information on quick service dining on the 86 Food Waste platform, some of those grab and go. We had some fast food restaurants involved in our pilot process. Also some independent owner-operator type guidance, where hotels really, a lot of the meat of it is about buffets, selling to large-scale clients for meetings and events, and some of the processes that are more specific there. But a lot of the big differences are going to be in the language. There's different roles in a hotel. One of them dealing with clients, one of them dealing with clients and guests, one of them dealing with customers. So it's just about tailoring that to the right audience. And it could be further tailored forever until we have, everyone with their own strategy to move this forward. But thanks for the question.
Yeah, thank you so much for that clarification, Samantha. And Clifton, if you want to back it up just the previous slide so that people who want to reach out directly to our presenters are welcome to with that contact information. The next question I have is back over to Flowers Foods. And Lori, I'm not sure if you all, off the top of my head, if you all shared your data with us this year, but if you're comfortable, the question is, what is your current diversion rate? And are you planning to use a third-party certification to validate your new diversion rate once you achieve it?
Yes, our current rate is at 92%, and what we typically do is go to we do a validation each year with our internal audit group. It's another division within the company. We have not decided to seek third-party certification at this time, but we are going to continue to evaluate it. However, with the numbers that we submit, we make sure that we have backup support and data from all the recyclers to support every bit of data that we bring into that number.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And again, just a big thank you to everybody who also did submit data with us. We're hoping that for Summit we'll have a lot to share and be able to learn from each other on that. Let's see. I've got a quick question here again for Elizabeth, which is that do you have any composting advice? Yeah, and actually I'm gonna combine that with a little bit of a question to prompt the other speakers as well. Is that we are also looking for information about if you've rolled out compost or food waste things to your employees or your direct tenants. So our other speakers can think about that. While Elizabeth, if you have any composting advice, please share it.
Yeah. Oh wait, am I muted again?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yep.
Sorry. Oh my gosh. Yes, we do have some advice. It's challenging. It's still challenging, even after doing it for a while. I think one thing that's really helped us regionally is we've created a mandate. So there's our regional government created basically a requirement for businesses that produce large volumes of food waste or food scraps to compost, and that it's a phased approach, starting with the largest generators, which are mainly your grocery stores, and then working on down. It won't cover all businesses, so some really small restaurants won't be covered, but that has helped leverage obviously because it's required, and then eventually that'll lead to a landfill ban on food. The other thing that has really helped in our city is that we for a long time have had recycling bundled into our garbage rate. So you pay one rate for garbage based on your volume, and that includes your recycling service. So it's not an additional charge. So we've created that same fee structure with food. So they can businesses can add compost. It's included in the garbage rate. So pros and cons to it. It's kind of a hidden cost, but at least it's not an upfront additional. They don't have to pay more money to compost upfront, at least on their garbage bill, since it's included. So those are two really important kind of more infrastructure things, and then I'm happy to talk more, offline if you want with, more kind of direct to business and tools we use. We provide like containers to help restaurants get started. So actually buckets, like, hard items that can kind of overcome a hurdle, and signage and training for staff and all sorts of resources like that too. So great question.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's interesting to hear it from that perspective. I know we have multiple partners that have brought up either the challenge about, the extra fees associated with, hauling waste streams that are diverted, and then also, working within the guidelines of more, more strict diversion guidelines from different localities. I know, for instance, San Francisco is coming to mind because they have also instituted a lot of, guidelines and resources on a local level.
Yeah.
So I have a question for either or both of our speakers, but I will say that this question in particular is really, I think a lot of you on the line might be able to also pipe up. So if this also speaks to you or you'd like to share, go ahead and in the chat box, let me know that you would be interested in speaking on this, and I'll turn it over to you after I give our speakers a chance, just because I think it could be a great conversation. The question is, what sorts of food waste initiatives are you working on in your offices for employees? So not, Samantha, I don't know, not to put WWF on the spot of what what you all are doing in your headquarters, but I'm curious to know the answer to that, or if you've been involved in that at all.
Yeah, that's an amazing question, and thank you to whoever asked it. Of course, we always rail against in all of our programs that preventing food waste, valuing food is something that is a culture shift. So it's something to embed in every individual. We fully agree. So my team at WWF US doesn't directly deal with any building facilities management, but we have had lots of conversations both with our great facilities team, and we have a really great group called the Disruptors Club that does a lot of internal disruption and is the one who set up recycling back in the day and makes us kind of walk the talk. So we do have building-wide compost. It's supplied by Veterans Compost. Anyone who's a DC local is probably familiar with the great service, the great team they have operating with veterans.
That's what comes to my house. It's my personal compost.
Exactly. And I'll mention they do relatively small-scale composting. So they have relatively small buckets. They don't handle really large volumes. They're not a provider we often work with on the hotel or restaurant side, but they might be a good fit depending on size. And we have worked with our development team to make sure our prevention guidance, like our buffet setting guidance and our ordering principles, are embedded in our meetings and events that we host both in the building and at other venues. So it's definitely something we're always thinking about. Just like the partners we work with, it's something we can always do better at, and there's always more people to engage. But it's been really fun to watch the pandas double down on food waste too over the last few years while our team has been bugging everyone.
That's great. Lori or anyone else who's on the call, do you have experiences of rolling out like some sort of food waste reduction or diversion, perhaps within your headquarters or, for the direct employees of your organization? We'd love to hear from you on that.
We have a few locations where there is opportunities for collection for food waste from the break rooms or from the offices. It's typically based off of the geographic region and what's available in those areas, and those are usually collection containers, almost like your residential trash, except that it's designated for the food waste, and it usually goes to compost as well. But it is typically limited to the geographic region and what's available in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, we have time for a couple more questions. If anyone wants to add it into the chat box or, pipe up and take yourself off of mute as well. I think, not to put one of our partners on the spot, but we haven't heard in this conversation about the overlap of residential properties and food waste. So if anyone is representing that perspective on the line, I'd love to hear from you about if that's worked and how you've done that with residential properties, because I think that I know a couple of our partners are trying that, and I'm curious to see how it's going and what those challenges might be. Great. Otherwise, I'm going to wait a couple of seconds just to see if we have any more questions come up on the line, or anyone who would just like to share their experience dealing with food waste, whether it's through this pilot or something you tried out, maybe it didn't work.
I can, this is Elizabeth again in Oregon. I can chime in a little bit about the residential. We've had a residential campaign for, 4 or 5 years, and it's really challenging. I think our biggest hurdle is measurement, and just it's really expensive to measure, and not having, great baseline data, and then not being able to really measure how much we're capturing and, participation rates it's just really hard. It's hard to know how well you're doing. You can really only measure on, how many contacts you've made, or, how many resources you've handed out, or, so it's really challenging. So if anybody has ideas on how to do residential measurement on a cheap budget, let me know.
Great. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. Great. Well, Clifton, if you wouldn't mind advancing 2 slides just to go back to the contact information for our leaders here. With that, I think we're going to wrap up here. I just want to say thank you so much for all of you for joining us again today, especially to our speakers, Samantha and Lori. Thank you so much for your time. I think it was really interesting to see those perspectives, and I'm excited for this to be a resource for our pilots. For any of our partners, if you have questions about, your data or what's going on or what's new, you can reach out to all of us as usual. We're happy to hear from you, and I hope that we'll see you during our early best practices from the Waste Pilot session for the Virtual Leadership Symposium, formerly known as the Better Building Summit, virtual this year, coming up in June. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Hannah.